Elly De La Cruz broke Statcast on Monday night, and that was only the icing on the cake. That was a huge night at the plate for the Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I am a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. I'm very glad that you're alongside with me today. I've been hosting this podcast now on a daily basis this is my 6th season doing it. I've been a co-host, I've been a solo host, but I love these Cincinnati Reds, and I love bringing information to you. Locked On Reds is for everyone, and I want to make you feel welcome here as we talk about the Reds. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you drop down into the comments section and let's talk Reds, because talking Reds is what I do. And I want to talk Reds with you. We're going to talk about what's every Reds fan, the big thing on every Reds fan's mind every single day. We'll dive into some geeky numbers, and we'll overreact to the everyday movements that is the marathon of the Major League Baseball season, because there's quite a bit to react to. And quite frankly, today's a happy day after a very big night at the plate for the Reds on Monday. I want to kind of break down some of those performances as we see, and just the overall exhale that was Monday night. Also, I have a question. Are we waiting on Graham Ashcraft to return? Because are we so sure that Carson Spiers is going to give up that spot? We'll discuss that coming up here in a little bit. And a little bit later on, I want to talk about the possibility of the Reds and the Marlins getting together for a trade this season. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast. That is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. All right, Monday night was cathartic. It was recharging. It was awesome, because the way that the Reds hit, that was the kind of performance that we've been waiting for what seems like a while. There was a stat before Monday's game that in the 10 previous games, they'd been hitting $180 with runners in scoring position, absolutely leaving so many opportunities on the base paths. And they did none of that on Monday. They brought them all in. Extra base hits abound. There was a bunch of doubles. You had Elly that hit the top of the riverboat party deck in straightaway center field. And by the way, Statcast said that was 439 feet. I have a hard time believing it was that short. Maybe to just the point that it stopped, but as high as he had to hit it to get it to where it went, like there was a dude that was on the party deck that got a home run ball. I don't know the last time. I think the last time that anything was close to that, it was hit by another team. I want to say it was Corbin Carroll last year. It was a fantastic, majestic blast, but that made it 11-3. So the Reds had done most of their damage up to that point. You had 3 hit days from Elly, 3 hit day from India. Elly was a triple away from the cycle. He was asked about that after the game, as if he was trying to shoot for a triple or something like that earlier on in the game. And he's just like, I just hit, man. Wherever I end up, where I end up at the end of that hit. But I want to get a hit. And he was hitting. Everybody was hitting, though. And I was so glad about it, because do you remember last week, whenever the Reds were going to Pittsburgh, and we were talking about their matchup against Bailey Falter, and how this Reds lineup just struggles with left-handed pitching, and I understand that. But Bailey Falter has been doing this with smoke and mirrors all season long. You could talk about his ERA until you blow in the face. Once you get past that number, there's a bunch of stuff that was showing me this guy can be hit. But the Reds didn't hit him in Pittsburgh. They didn't really do anything to him. But they got through on Monday night. And it was after 3 perfect innings. He was perfect the first time through the order. Nobody got on base. Nobody got a hit. No nothing. And you're just like, oh, here we go again. But the lineup comes through big time. Maybe all they needed was just to call up Levi Jordan, who you could be forgiven if you didn't know who that was, because quite frankly, he wasn't on my radar either. And get this, okay? He starts in right field on Monday night, bats 8th. He never had played right field as a professional. He's been playing on the infield for Louisville. He's listed, if you look him up on like Fangraphs and stuff like that, he's listed as a second baseman / third baseman. And they called him up and they put him in right field. They put TJ Friedl on the injured list for his hamstring injury. As annoying as that was, boy, I tell you what, as I walked into the ballpark on Monday night, I wasn't sure what I was feeling. After that rough series against the Red Sox, and then you put TJ Friedl back on the injured list for what feels like the 55th time this season, and you're just like, man, what are we going to get out of this team? And then they just go off. Clutch hit after clutch hit after clutch hit. Stuart Fairchild had a big hit that plated too. So many great at-bats on Monday night. And Levi Jordan, not to be outdone, his major league debut, he gets a double, he gets a sac fly, got the job done. As much as I say I didn't know who that was, we know his name now. Not sure exactly what we'll get out of him. We'll continue to watch that. I saw somebody on Twitter ask me if it's time to have the conversation. Should Levi Jordan stay up and Will Benson go down? I don't know about that yet. Like I said, that's the first time Levi Jordan's ever played in the outfield. So maybe let's give him a minute to see what he's got. But the first game, 2 thumbs up on that one. But just overall, man, that was the kind of night that Reds fans and Reds players alike, and I get it, one win does not fix everything. A win on Monday night against the Pirates, against Bailey Falter, who's been doing it with smoke and mirrors all season, does not right the ship. They got to win today. Or at least win one of these next 2 games and get this series dub. And then go into St. Louis and do the same thing there. Or at least split. There's lots of work to be done. But a night like Tuesday night is much needed over the course of a season, especially after the week. Not even just the series against the Red Sox, but really the series in Pittsburgh last week too was frustrating to no end. So after all of that, they're able to come out here and score 11. Hang 11 on the Pirates. Get the triumvirate. Right? I'm calling it that. Nobody's really calling it that, but I'm going to call it that. They get a win. They give the fans some free chicken sandwiches, and they give the fans some free pizza. Because they scored 11 runs, you get free chicken sandwiches. And I think it's chicken sandwiches, something free at a local chicken establishment. And the 11 strikeouts that you get free pizza at a local pizza establishment. No free ads on this show. No free ads. But just an overall fantastic night. 100%, 10 out of 10. Would recommend. I get it. They gave up 5 runs and, somebody could probably look sideways at that, but I got no complaints. No complaints. I was happy to see it. And it made me wonder, because I talked all about the hitting. I didn't talk about the starting pitcher yet, Carson Spiers, because we're all talking about when is Graham Ashcraft coming back? When is he going to be ready to take his spot in the rotation? Are we sure that Carson Spiers is just going to hand it over? Here on Locked On Reds, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news about the Reds, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for your unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. I know I have filed my taxes multiple different ways over the years. Being a 1099 employee does that. And Tax Network USA makes it easy, no matter your situation. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or hit that big parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. For more information, see the link in the description of today's episode below. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. You've got to check out Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And speaking of every day, shout out to our everydayers out there. Thanks for joining us here on this Locked On Reds podcast, this latest edition of the podcast. For our everydayers, on the next Locked On Reds podcast, we're going to be breaking down this Hunter Green start in the second round of Hunter Green versus Mitch Keller and what this looks like. And honestly, this is probably going to be a battle we see quite a lot moving forward, as these two teams have controllable starters for years and years and years. But looking forward to breaking this down. Plus, later on this week, don't miss, on Friday, we will have a live show again, Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So, Monday night was cathartic for the lineup. The lineup needed it. We needed it. We needed to see the ability of the Reds to score double-digit runs, right? Like, this team is so much better than this in the lineup. But something that it's been very good at all year is pitching, especially the starting pitching. And there's been the whole, Graham Ashcraft down to AAA, and how is this going to work, and how quickly will he be back, and what does he need to work on, and all this other stuff. And while he is answering this question, the Reds still have to make a start every fifth day that his spot would normally be. So who was going to do that? Well, they had Carson Spiers step in, and his first start was okay. 4 runs, 6 innings. The 6 innings part was super surprising in Pittsburgh. And so here he goes again, his second start this year, and he gets he has to face the exact same lineup. He goes 6 innings and allows just 3 runs this time. And quite frankly, the first earned run came in the 3rd inning, which was super frustrating. If you missed this 3rd inning, a quick breakdown of that was ground ball to third base, hard ground ball to third base, hard play by Santiago Espinal. Couldn't make a good throw. Throw gets away from Candelario at first base. They rule it a base hit, but then the runner advances to second on the error. So then, coming up next, you have Brian Reynolds, who he singles, and he moves the guy up to third. So you have first and third with nobody out, and the very next guy gets a single as well. And it's just a quick and easy one run. But then all of that, and as much as Carson Spiers could have just imploded at that point, or if not imploded, at least allowed the Pirates to score multiple runs in an inning, he didn't do that. He buckled down, gets a fly out, gets a ground ball, and gets another ground ball, and he's out of it. Carson Spiers isn't going to be that guy that blows away the opposition, and he's not going to get a ton of swing and misses, but he did pretty all right even at that last night. In his 6 innings, he had 5 strikeouts, and his MO, his bread and butter as a pitcher, whether he in the future, whether he's a starter or whether he's a relief pitcher, whatever it is, his MO is he throws strikes and he doesn't walk guys. He walked one batter last night, which was an amazing performance given that everybody who followed him out of the bullpen decided to walk people. So that was annoying to watch. But for his part of this game, he took care of business. And that's just kind of starting to become what Carson Spiers is. He just takes care of business. Remember, he came in to relieve Frankie Montas on a game where Montas just didn't have it. And you bring in Carson Spiers, and he throws 5 2/3 shutout innings. If that is who he is going to be, if he's going to be the guy that answers the call every single time he gets the ball, then sign me up for that. At the very least, we can feel super comfortable giving Graham Ashcraft as much time as he needs. But also think of this, because I don't necessarily think it's an either or, Carson Spiers or Graham Ashcraft. Think about this. There's a little bit of load management coming for Nick Lodolo. I know we hate to talk about this because he's pitching super well right now, and the last thing you want to hear is when he's not going to be pitching. But he has never thrown that many innings in a season. As a major league ball player, he has never even approached like 150 innings. And if the Reds are going to have it, if the Reds are going to make a postseason run, and they're going to get into October, and there's going to be this wild card series that's best of 3, and the Reds can go toe-to-toe with anybody because they got Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo as their first 2 starters, whatever order that is. That's not the point of this discussion. But in those 3 games, you can throw those 2 guys in the first 2 games. You want to make sure you have the ability to do that. And you don't get to October, and Nick Lodolo's already thrown 140 innings, and he's starting to break down. You want to make sure that he's fresh for that. So could that be the case? Could it be something that after 2 or 3 more starts, Graham Ashcraft is looking like nails again and you're ready to bring him up? Then maybe you give Nick Lodolo, 2 or 3 starts of, he has a sore back, quote unquote, or he has a sore toe, quote unquote, whatever it is. Give him a break. But you bring up Ashcraft to take his spot, and Carson Spiers keeps pitching. I'm kind of an advocate for keeping Spiers in the rotation, at least for now. I'm not saying he's fighting to be this team's ace. That's not my point here. My point here is that Carson Spiers' emergence really helps out this ball club to a point that they once again have the pitching depth that we guessed at back in February. We were talking about guys like Carson Spiers. We were talking about guys like Connor Phillips and Lyon Richardson and maybe Rhett Lauder as reasons to be bullish about this team's pitching depth, and maybe Chase Petty. We really didn't mention Carson Spiers. And quite frankly, that's been his career. He was not drafted. He was an undrafted signing and all this other stuff. He has overcome all of that to get to this point, and he is just continuing every 5th day to take that ball, knowing that people are not necessarily sure that he should be doing that, and he's still pitching as good as he is. I want to see him continue to do that because I think he's earned it. And I think that his performances has really opened up a lot of possibilities with how the Reds can manage this starting pitching staff the rest of the season. We are entering trade deadline season. I've talked a lot about the Reds possibly going to the Oakland A's and getting Brent Rooker. But what if they can't get that done? What if Brent Rooker goes somewhere else? What if the Oakland A's don't want to trade Brent Rooker? they have another option, a team that they could check 2 boxes with one trade, the Miami Marlins. I'll tell you why coming up next. Did you click more on Elly De La Cruz stats last night? I hope you did, because you made a couple of bucks over at PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. All you have to do is pick your favorite player, like Elly, and find your favorite statistics, like, I don't know, hits or home runs or RBIs or runs scored, and click more in the case of Elly, and you'll see the money roll in. All you need to do is put together 2 or more picks, and in some cases, 4 picks can get you 100 times your money. That's right, you turn $10 into $1,000 just like that. It's super easy to do. You can make your picks in 60 seconds or less, and PrizePicks has quick withdrawals and very easy to use interfaces on their apps, whether you have Apple or Android or whatever it is. Check out PrizePicks today, and you can use the code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB, for a first deposit match of up to $100. So get playing now. You can find Elly De La Cruz, find his stats, click more on them, and start seeing the cash roll in over at PrizePicks. Again, download the app and use the code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB, for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. All right, for the next couple of minutes, I thought I'd bring in my friend Peter, who knows the Marlins like nobody's business, because he knows the Marlins better than most people. He is the host of Locked On Marlins, Peter Pratt. And when it comes to this Marlins team, Peter, I know that it's been a rough year, but this last week had been pretty good, which, by the way, thank you for beating the Cardinals. Was very happy to see that. That was a very good series. But there are teams that, as we get into trade season, I think that the tea leaves are pointing to the Reds being buyers unless something really bad happens. So I think that the Reds are going to be looking. The Reds are going to be talking. And I feel like Nick Krall is going to be calling on the Marlins. Are the Marlins to the point that if the right caller comes in with a good offer, are they going to make a deal?
Jeff, no doubt the Marlins are selling, so I can guarantee that, I can confirm it. Sources say Marlins will be selling, and that will be the situation. What I would say, and this is the question you asked, though, I think is a really interesting one, because the timing, I think, is going to be critical. We've already seen with the Marlins that Peter Bendix, if the right deal came along on the 4th of May, was happy to pull the trigger on a Luis Arias deal, and so what that says to me is, if there's a hot commodity, and I think the Marlins do at least have one major hot commodity, maybe a couple of others, but if there's someone that you really like on this Marlins roster that think make a real difference to this year and beyond potentially, you may need to try and pull the trigger sooner rather than later, because Bendix may not wait. I think that's the really interesting thing. We've seen it with Arias. The right deal came up, boom, Arias gone after a month for the Marlins. So yeah, I think there could be there's going to be some activity, no doubt. The question will be is how soon they go, or do they leave it right until the end and try to kind of maximize it and play everyone off against each other? It's going to be really interesting to see the strategic way they go about it.
I'd be intrigued to see how they do this, because there's 2 guys that I think the Reds could really check off 2 boxes with one deal, and the Reds and the Marlins have a pretty, consistent relationship when it comes to making trades. I mean, Anthony DeSclafani and Luis Castillo, famously former Marlins, then became Reds, or at least in some capacity. Castillo didn't make it to the majors at that point, but there's definitely a history of these 2 teams working together. So for a moment, let's channel our inner Freaky Friday, and I'll be Nick Krall and you can be Peter Bendix, and look at the possibility of a deal, because there's 2 guys that I'm looking at. And probably the first guy might be one of those players that he does wait on, so that might not be an early trade season deal. But then the second guy's an outfielder. The first guy I want to start with is relief pitcher Tanner Scott. And then the second guy that I want to see about is Brian De La Cruz out in the outfield. I think that just a quick profile on each of them. Tanner Scott has a really good year going with the ERA, really good at limiting hard contact. Looks like the strikeout rate has ticked down a little bit from last year, but it's still pretty good. The walk rates ticked up a little bit from last year. You'd like to see that come down, but overall, he has been a reliable dude out of the bullpen for the Marlins, and the Reds could use another arm. I mean, there's nobody in Major League Baseball that couldn't use another bullpen arm at the deadline. Then on the other side of that, Brian De La Cruz, the Reds need outfield help. The Reds need a guy who can mash lefties, and the Reds need really a power bat in the outfield with a good arm. He's all of that. And I know that there's going to be some folks see the 298 on base percentage, at least, before Monday's game, and say, why are we looking at this? I'm looking at the slugging. I'm looking at the expected slugging of 498. And I'm looking at the fact that he's hit 14 home runs. So these are the two guys I'm looking at. Who are the Marlins looking for in a potential trade?
Yeah, great question. What we've already seen, again, it's tough because you got a new front office in, you got a new, president of the baseball ops. And so it's hard to pass judgment at this point. All we have is the body of work from the Arias deal, right? Like that's what's on tape. And what's on tape is the blue chip aspect of that was a younger guy. The sense is the Marlins are looking for guys that are some way away, that are likely to be ultra toolsy developmental prospects or projects for the Marlins. So I get the sense that they're not going to be good in 24. I don't have to get the sense. They're not going to be good in 24. I get the sense that in 25, it's going to be more of the same. And so I don't think they're going to be seeking those major league ready dudes. I think it's going to be guys that are maybe a few years away. And I think that's the type of profile they're going to look to prioritize as a headliner. With the Arias deal, they also took some guys who were at a double-A level, who could be big leaguers. But I think the guy that they really liked, Dylan Head, was 19 years old, some way away. He was the first round pick for the Padres last year. And so I'm expecting the headliners to have a similar age profile as that. So we're not expecting to see 24, 25-year-old prospects that are ready now, that can fill a need. The Marlins are going to have a lot of needs in 25. And so that's, I think, what the profile will be. And I think they're going to prioritize offense as well. Like they've got some pitchers they really like in the organization. So I think we're going to look at similar to Dylan Head profile, young, projectable, offensive guy. So that's what we're going to be trying to cook up here, I think, with this one, Jeff.
I think I got a good offer for you then, because I was thinking I wasn't sure if it was offensive or pitching or something like that, because I know that the Marlins traded Jake Eater last year for Jake Berger. So bat, yeah, I'm thinking this because number one, if I'm calling the Marlins, it's because my call to the A's to try and get Brent Rooker did not work out. Because that's the guy that that's my number one dude that I'm looking for. At least, hopefully, I'm hoping Nick Krall's looking for that guy. But if that's not the case, then I'm looking at sending Cam Collier, who is a third baseman, could play first base, could be DH, that is 19 years old, one of our top 5 prospects, really solid player, first round pick a couple of years ago out of high school. He's still got a long way to go in development. There's definitely some questions about some stuff, but the power is evident. He has a good bat, and he seems like a really decent baseball IQ kind of kid.
Yep.
So we're going to start with him. And then another guy that I'm going to put into this trade is, let's see, because you were saying you don't need a lot of pitching, because my second guy was going to be a pitcher, but
we'll happily take arms, Jeff. No problem. We always take some arms. So,
but you're not looking at 20. You're not looking at a guy that's ready to go. There was 2 guys that I'm flipping between. There's a guy that the Reds drafted last season, and there was a guy that he made his major league debut last season, but he's kind of been up and down in his development. So let's go with this. We'll go with the guy they just drafted, Ty Floyd. I'm going to give you Ty Floyd, who's a top 15 prospect as well. Really solid arm. And there's been some that have wondered if he would be ready to go in 2025. I'm thinking at best late 2025, maybe 2026 for him.
Yep.
And it might be sped up if he goes into the Marlins system, maybe about the same. But I'm looking at my 2 guys being Cam Collier and Ty Floyd, at least when we start kind of looking at this deal.
Jeff, I feel like the conversation will definitely be interesting there in that spot. The guy that Cam Collier, the way you described the profile, again, former first-round pick, third base, Marlins are lacking at the corner infield spots, I would say, in general, particularly third base. They tried to address that with Jacob Berry a few years ago, probably the same draft. What was he? 2022.
I believe it was. Yeah, I believe it was 2022.
I think that's the same year that the Marlins went with Jacob Berry at 6, and had him penciled in as a third baseman. And it has just not worked at all with Jacob Berry. It looks to be an absolute bust of a pick. So maybe they finally get what they were looking for in Cam Collier, maybe. So yeah, that to me, the profile sounds right, the age sounds right, the pedigree sounds right. To me, that feels like the type of headliner in the type of deal here. Then a projectable arm that's maybe around back end of 25, 26. That's when the Marlins are going to need some more arms, Jeff, because the reality is Jesus Luzardo, whilst hit the IL recently, likely he's going to be gone this offseason. There's a few other guys that could be dealt this deadline. So the Marlins are going to need to kind of restock this rotation, I think, looking towards the back end of 25 and 26. So for me, these two feel like a really nice fit, I would say. So I'm happy to see that the Reds are thinking about, going for it. And I think when you look at the Marlins last year, they were kind of in a similar spot in many ways where, you feel like at the deadline, if you do invest, and the Marlins did invest, it did give them that boost. You go and get Jake Berger, Josh Bell, and they went for Robertson as a reliever. It didn't quite work out with him, but particularly the two offensive guys, they were starting to tail away. You add those two in, they both came in and hit like kings. The next thing is you're in the 5 seed in the NL. So, it's great to see. And that's what I like about this third wildcard spot. It keeps everyone interested. Right now, it's basically the Marlins and Rockies that are out of it. Other than that, everyone's in. Everyone's buying. It's great news for the Marlins because they actually have pieces to sell. And so It should be a seller's market. And that's why I think it's interesting on the timing, just going back to where we started on this, that the timing around it, like for Tanner Scott, the reliever, do they really just leave that right up until the kind of final minutes just to maximize value? It's high risk because obviously he's a rental. And so clearly they need to make sure a deal is to be done. But yeah, it's going to be a fun deadline. And I love to see that so many clubs look like they're going to be buyers, not only from a Marlins perspective, but I think it's just interesting for baseball where you've got a fun wildcard run where tons of teams are in it, like the Central. That's just going to be a dogfight all the way. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think in the span of 2 weeks, the Reds have been in second place and last place, and they're back in last place. So, need a little bit of a run, but need a little bit of help, and hopefully the Reds and Marlins will be trade partners here this trade season.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Like I said, tomorrow we'll break down the Hunter Green start going up against Mitch Keller. Hopefully, we'll be talking about a Reds series win and a chance to go get a sweep on Wednesday. And don't forget, later this week, Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going live talking about the Reds as we head into this weekend in St. Louis. Make sure you don't miss that on our YouTube page at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. But until then, you know that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.